Coach, given you got such an up close and personal look at Malcolm as you got to coach him at Naps and now watch his continued growth in the academy, just what impresses you about how quickly he's developed?
He is such an incredible kid and he's really smart. For me, Malcolm has the world at his fingertips. He came in weighing like 220 pounds, and it's just crazy to look at him every day, especially now, how much weight he's put on the play offensive line. But more so than anything, to answer your question, he has the most incredible attitude. Like he's always positive, and he takes coaching and you see improvement from him every single time you give him a coaching point. He's so much fun to be around. I really like Malcolm, and it has been personally enjoyable for me to watch his transition to where he is now.
How is your continuity with a lot of these guys coming from Naps to now here at the academy? How's that ease your transition?
Well, number one, you don't have to know as many people. In a program like Navy that has a bigger roster, it can be a challenge if you're new and you have to learn everybody and you have to learn who they are as people, who they are as students, who they are as football players. And for a lot of these guys, I mean, there are 55 guys who are on the roster now who are with me at Naps. And many of them are playing or contributing in some form or fashion. And I can think back to when in early July of 24 when I met them at Naval Station Newport. I can think back to that day and time of where they are, and now it's April 14th, 2026, and it's almost 2 years now. And so you end up getting to know so many kids personally, and then I can provide good context and feedback to the coaches about how they learn best, how you can challenge them best, how I don't know how well they play in certain schemes and things like that, what positions they do well, because I was able to just see it, up close and personal. Because you can recruit a kid at a certain position and then you get them and maybe they work out better elsewhere. As we see with Malcolm, right? He came in as a tight end and now he's a right tackle.
You personally living proof of work ethic going from walk on to scholarship. I want to know if you could pick one characteristic that made you the player you were at LSU that you try to instill in your guys, what is it?
For me, it's perseverance because I think of my college experience. It's really created to try to get as many people to quit as possible. And I don't say that from a negative standpoint, but just a realistic standpoint of is the environment that I grew up in college football was based on attrition. It was based on creating a program where as many people would either rise or you'd essentially be forced to quit because you couldn't handle it. And what you learn in the process is that you're truly capable of more than you think as a person, as an athlete, as a competitor, as a student, as whatever. And so for me, I refused to quit because I knew, or excuse me, once I learned that the whole goal was to try to get as many guys to quit, for me, I was like, no, I'm going to overcome that, that they can't break me and there's nothing they can do to break me. And it's the same type of spirit and belief that I've tried to coach with as a high school coach, excuse me, also as a coach at Naps and now here at the Naval Academy is that like ultimately people want to break you. Ultimately, people want to see how weak you are and if you can't handle pressure. And for me, it's like, yes, you can handle it. You need people around you who are going to put their arms around you and support you and remind you that you can do it. But but it's the number one trait that I think I hope I for me, I hope I can bring to the Naval Academy.
Thank you.
Scott Wyckoff, WBAL.
Coach, what did it mean for you and your family to have this opportunity to come back to Maryland, not only coming back to a new home for you that you embraced several years ago, but also to be able to take your career up another notch at the Naval Academy?
So I was telling my wife this at dinner last week, and I mean this wholeheartedly. Um, for both of us, for both me and my wife, we grew up on humble beginnings, and it means a whole lot to us to be here. I was telling her that every day that I drive through the gate, um, at gate one or gate eight, I always am very, very grateful. Like I read that sign every day, United States Naval Academy, and I take that very seriously. And for me, it's very humbling, and it's one of those things where if you would have told young me that I'd be living in the state of Maryland at all, having grown up in West Africa and Louisiana. I would have never believed you. But now we're going on like 12 years total of living in Maryland almost. And it's so awesome. My wife grew up on the coast in South Louisiana, so she loves coastal places. So she thinks Annapolis is fantastic. We just came from Newport, and I'm just truly blessed that Coach Newberry has believed in me to hire me first at Naps, and then has believed in me further to bring me here to the academy.
What was your experience like at Loyola Blakefield? Navy is a special place, but anyone who knows Baltimore knows how special a place there on North Charles Street is, Loyola Blakefield. What did that mean for you having that opportunity to kind of cut your teeth there as a coach?
It was awesome. The first thing I learned having moved up to Maryland from Louisiana was that there was a strong sense of community amongst the local high schools, which I'll be completely honest, I had no knowledge of prior to taking the job. And people wore their colors and pride for their high schools and alma maters very, very strongly, and none other than Loyola Blakefield. And for me to be entrusted with the head coaching position, I even remember when I was offered the head coaching position there, the principal, John Marinacci at the time, he brings me into his office and tells me he's going to offer me the head coaching job. And my response to him was, why? And I said, why are you going to offer me this? I don't know anyone here. I'm not from Maryland. I have no connections to the state. And he goes, I'm making you the head coach. He's like, sign the contract already. I was more like fighting him on it because I was just like, I don't really know that he knows what he's doing because I don't think he knows. I have no clue what's going on here. But Loyola was such a special place. To this day, I still have so many friends that I keep in contact with, and kids and alums and teachers and coaches from Loyola who I'm still connected with. And actually, on the day that we went public with my hire here, what was most gratifying to me was I heard from a bunch of my former players at Loyola who expressed just thanks and gratitude for my time with them as players, and it was truly the most exciting part to hear from that group because it really was an awesome place. And leaving there was hard because I was there for 9 years. It's one of those places you can work at a long time. So. Uh, I remember telling my principal, I'm only leaving this place if it's for something truly special and that's mission oriented. And that was the Naval Academy.
How has it helped you coaching that you had at the level of Navy's academic prowess? The fact that you had coaching experience at a prep school like Loyola Blakefield, where academics were number one, like the Naval Academy, then football.
Yeah. So what you really had to do and know was that, like, hey, to all of our players, like, you won't play if you're not like the best version of yourself as a student. And so all of our teachers really want the kids to be successful on the field. But the reality of a place like Loyola is that the majority of those guys didn't even really go on, or excuse me, those guys wanted to go on to play college, but it was really easy message to say, hey, you have zero chance if you don't excel academically. And I'm with your teachers. I'm supporting your teachers. And and we also were a very mission-based institution. And I've only worked for mission-based institution. So for me, that part was easy to translate coming to the Naval Academy, where there's a core physical and military and academic mission here too. So I personally love it, and it's one of the great factors that drew me to the Naval Academy and to NAPS.
Thanks, Coach.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bill Wagner, Annapolis Capital.
Hey, Anthony, nice to meet you. How did you? It seems like quite the jump from Baton Rouge to Baltimore. What prompted that?
My wife is what prompted that. So we were living in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and she is a university professor. So she actually works at Loyola of Maryland. So she works in Baltimore. And when we were dating, I was working at Catholic High of Baton Rouge. I was a teacher and a coach. I was the offensive line coach there and teaching full time there. And she actually got her first job offer in Arkansas. And I was like, I'm not moving to Arkansas. And then it was at Arkansas State. No offense if anyone here is from Arkansas, but I was like that to me
You're
that was
clear.
going to
You're
be
clear.
I
No
was
one
like
on here from Arkansas.
that's going to be a deal breaker. I'm not moving to Arkansas. And so then she quickly applied and got this job in Baltimore. And I said, well, if you like it, because she was in Arkansas for about a month and was like, okay, I don't really like this place. And so I was like, I'm not going to move until you decide that you like this spot in Maryland. And she was like, I actually really love Maryland. I love Baltimore. And so I packed up and joined her. So that's what brought us to Maryland. So.
So then, your time at the Naval Academy Prep School, 15-0. Can you kind of talk about, because that's a very important part of this program, building from the prep school. What has
Yeah.
Coach Newberry done during his tenure? Because he's talked about this to really build the prep school, because that's the feeder system, and when the prep school's having success, it bodes well for the Navy football.
So when I got hired at the prep school, that was the first thing he said was he's like, we have to get better at the prep school, and this is a serious undertaking. And he goes, but he was very clear to me that in having success at the prep school, what that meant was like truly making sure the kids had the best experience possible. And I think if you look at the prep school in a bunch of different ways, how you frame their experience can really shape how you coach and interact with them. So for me, I wanted to make sure that every kid that came across contact with me at the prep school knew that I cared for them and knew that I loved them and that I would do anything for them to make sure that they were successful academically, but also on the football field. And and it's tough, right? The prep school has its tough days, and Newport can be cold and windy. However, he wanted to make sure that we had the resources we needed. Um, and then so it's not a sports related answer, but we spent a lot of time on the psychology and the wellness of the players. And once we focused on the wellness of the players, we found that the football piece came pretty naturally because they were able to play freely, play with happiness, play with joy, and have a lot of success on the field. So that was simply our approach, in all honesty, was to make sure that those kids were doing well in school, and to make sure that they were happy and to make sure they felt supported and cared for and loved.
So do you think, going 15-0, because I know there's a lot to what happens at the prep school, and it's ultimately about getting the football players to the Naval Academy and good academic standing. But do you think winning on the football field, particularly beating the Army and Air Force prep school squads, does that have tangible results? Does that, carry forward?
So I do. So I do because I think, and and I learned this from my time at LSU, but also my time at Loyola, because at Loyola we played in a very big rivalry game against another school across town that I won't mention their name. Um,
The Turkey Bowl.
yes, exactly. The Turkey Bowl. One of the things I learned from that rivalry was that like the reason why every win matters is because it impacts your classes. What I mean by that is this. So we had lost like several straight of those games. And when you think about it, at some point you get to the point where there's no player on your roster that's experienced a win in that game. And so every time you win, that means that you have a certain percentage of your roster who's experienced victory, right? So if we don't beat Air Force and Army's prep school, then we don't have any kids on our roster who've experienced beating those guys. And I think that tangibly translates to whenever they're at the Naval Academy, they can remember, oh, I beat those guys at the prep school level. And now you've seen in the last couple of years, we beat those guys in the actual Army Navy game. And for me, that's valuable because the more you go on, and if you get to 4 years and you have no one on your roster that's experienced victory, it's hard to instill confidence. It's hard to instill belief. It's hard to instill, and coaches can try all the motivational tactics, but I think tangibly having individuals who have done it and know the joy of post-game results of winning matters tremendously, in my opinion.
Last for me, can you talk about Coach Newberry restructuring the staff to make it fit for you? You obviously, the best fit for you is as an offensive line coach, being as you played that position at LSU. You coached offense and offensive line at the prep school. He moves Tommy Laurendine to coach the running backs to find a spot for you. How grateful are you to Coach Newberry for what he's done for you?
I'm extremely grateful to Coach Newberry. He's an awesome mentor of mine. I have tremendous respect for him. I think he's really smart. I think he's really savvy, and he's an atypical college head coach. You know, so I had a bunch of friends that played college football, and I have a bunch of friends now who coach in college football. And he's not like a lot of other coaches in a wide variety of ways. I'm not saying that because he's my boss, but I'm saying that because it's actually the truth. And so for him to reshuffle things around to fit me in is extremely humbling, and it is extra motivation to come to work and be the best version of myself that I can be and make sure I support him. I support Coach Chronic, I support Coach Guillermo, and I support all of our assistant coaches and players to be the best version, because I know that this is a gift to be here, and I know that this isn't like any other college football job. I mean, there are a lot of people who coach football across the country, and they do it for all different types of sums of money, but not everyone does it for a mission and a purpose. And I think what he's truly built is a purpose-driven institution, a purpose-driven team with real role models and real structures in place to support the students, to support the coaches, to support the whole operation. And I'm extremely grateful. And Coach Lorndy and I are really close, and he's super excited to have his own position group, and I help out wherever I can. I help with our cut ups. I help make drawings and presentations. I do whatever anyone needs me to do. If someone needs food from downstairs, I go get them food. If I need to go make a run to Dahlgren, I'll do that. I don't really care. I want to help contribute to winning, and I have zero ego and zero interest in doing my own thing, because it's the reason why I love this place, because it's so united.
Joe Miller, Navy Radio.
Hey, Coach, pleasure to meet you. Reading back through your bio and going over some stuff, I wanted to ask you, like, what was this journey that you've been on? What was the guiding light? What was the foundation that you always went back throughout this journey for you?
For me, it was my family values. What I find really cool being in the sport of football is that no one in my family has any background in athletics, really. So my dad is a Fulbright scholar, is a PhD in chemistry, and was a longtime chemistry professor. My mom was in early childcare, and I have a brother who is in higher ed and different things like that. But no one is really in, and my sisters are in social work and other areas like that in the business world. But no one really did sports. And in fact, like my oldest sister, Banshee, is really fast, and she did track for one day in high school, and she didn't go to practice the next day. And her track coach asked her why she didn't go back. And her thing was, she was like, "You guys expect us to go every day?" And I come from a family where like sports is like, it's almost non-existent. And so no one in my family, even to this day, understands football. Like they really don't. However, they support any good and positive actions that we're doing. And my mom and dad would always ask me, like, for anything that we did in sports and school and music, whatever the case is, she would always ask, number one, is it healthy? Is it healthy for you to be doing that thing? Number two, do you love it? Okay. And number three, are you having a great time, and are you making other people around you better for your participation in that? And that was always my guiding light. Like for me, the moment I stopped loving getting up and be like, oh, I have to go to Navy today, it's probably the day I need to get out of here. Right. And for me, it's been such a dream. I've been in football in some capacity for over 20 years. And it feels like day one, because it's just, I still have the same level of excitement and passion for it.
Not that you're unique from the perspective that other coaches haven't coached at the high school level, but you're probably a little bit closer to it than a lot of coaches on the staff. And you said, as you talked about earlier, you were a teacher as well. How did that role and how did that sort of impact and prepare you for this role here at the Naval Academy?
Well, so in my work as a classroom, especially being at a place like Loyola, that was a very high academic school, like I had to bring my A game academically. Like I taught honors courses at Loyola. So It was great and all fine and dandy that I was the football coach, but I had some freshmen, and I taught freshmen as well too. So I had some freshmen who was sitting in my honors world history class who was expecting his teacher to have the best and most prepared and most prepared lesson possible. So like I really couldn't sit there and be like, well, you know what, I got a game Friday, so here, do this worksheet. Because those freshmen were all ready to roll and they're all really, really smart. So it prepared me for that. But it also, for me, what was also great about teaching and being at the high school levels, you get to know students off the field because there are many students who I coached and taught, and they could be different people in the classroom than they were on the field. There were some kids who were kind of maniacs on the field, but in the classroom, they were like so subdued, or vice versa. Uh, I don't know. It taught you a lot about the holistic approach of people and how people are nuanced, that people are not stagnant, that people have variance and differences to them that exist in a multitude of facets within their own life. So I learned a ton from being a school teacher, and then, oh, by the way, yes, so that's great. I have my lesson prep, but I got 80 players who are going to need their coach to be most prepared to win the game on Saturday. And so working at NAPS in particular, and in my role here, like I have to do a lot of different things and be prepared for all of them. And working at schools prepared me so great for that in a whole lot of ways. And the last thing I'll say to your question about that is my time as a teacher, I can sit back, especially being in an assistant position coach role, and look at like how I would view certain things and give feedback and opinions on, hey, try this tactic with this kid. He seems like he responds well if you do X, Y, or Z, and kind of go from there and give my feedback that way.
I'm also curious from the perspective that being Naps the last couple of years, how close is that relationship? I mean, is it a week by week conversation that you have with the coaching staff? Are you watching the games on Saturday, the Navy game? What is that relationship like throughout the football season and even outside of the football season?
So during the football season, what's most important is to learn of all the kids that are at NAPS, which Navy assistant coach directly recruited them. And so then you develop a connection of like giving that coach updates on their guys that they recruited. And then you siphon it off and give them about probably bi-weekly updates on how the kids are doing academically, personally, and athletically to the position coaches. And then and then I developed some strong relationships, obviously with Coach Guillermo, with Coach Williams, Coach Cronick, but also some of the defensive guys like Coach Niumatalolo, Coach Hall, Coach Wimberly, some of those guys, and just update them on their guys, because what you never really want from Naps is you never want a surprise, right? And that was my goal, is to never give the Navy coaches a surprise. Like if something happened with a player, good, bad, or indifferent, at least they knew about it, and I did a good job on my end giving them all the information that I had. We would watch every game, not together as a team because oftentimes we played at the same time, but we would watch the film of every Navy game every Monday afterwards at NAPS, and we would have the kids figure out like, hey, can we call out the formations that we're learning? Can we call out the plays? Can we call out the techniques that they're using, and get the kids really familiar with their processing speed of what's going on the field? Because I think what Navy does best is has a bunch of players who are able to process at a really high level. And so that was kind of the process for us at NAPS and getting the kids familiar. And then we tried to also take 4 to 5 visits to the academy. So like the kids came down for a couple of weekends. We went to Army Navy game. We came in the spring for spring football and things like that. For instance, next year the NAPS group is going to be coming down to multiple trips. They might even make it to the Notre Dame game. It's how connected can you stay to the Navy program as frequent as possible. And then lastly, getting the coaches here to just communicate with their guys in their position and from their area recruiting wise.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it.
Anthony, can you tell us a little bit about being in Liberia and what was going on there? How old were you when your family moved to Baton Rouge? Why Baton Rouge? Just kind of that whole backstory that we don't know.
Yeah, so sadly, Liberia was one of the, or prior to the war, Liberia was one of the most, um, the what's the word? It was one of the most developed and prided itself on strong educational traditions. And and like anything else, to save you, a super lengthy, multi-decade conflict into a couple of minutes. Human greed, it's always amazing to me. It's a daily reminder when I come to this job and come to work every day to be selfless and to really support others because what truly ruined Liberia was human greed. It's a country with a lot of great natural resources, diamonds and rubber and things of those nature. It's a country that is very small. It's a country that has affiliation with the United States, has created as a place by the U.S. government to send expatriated slaves. And so it's a place where a lot of people had a lot of vested interest in for a lot of different reasons. And so essentially, to make a long story short, a civil war broke out in the late 80s, but really it started with a lot of conflict between different tribal groups. And where my family was placed in the center of that is my dad had he got his undergraduate in Liberia and he got his master's degree at Marquette University in Wisconsin. And then each time after those degrees, he would come back to Liberia and he wanted to get a PhD and he applied for the Fulbright scholarship program and he was awarded a Fulbright um, scholarship. However, the Fulbright program allows its people to be pretty selective about where they go. The only problem for him was that at the time that he was to choose his Fulbright designation, the war was ramping up and all the political pundits were expecting a full-scale conflict to break out. And so he had applied to a bunch of different places in the US and Europe to continue his studies for his PhD in some science-related field. Most likely it was going to be chemistry. And when he applied to all those places, LSU was actually the first place to accept him. And his Fulbright advisor actually told him that you don't really have the luxury of being selective. You have to go to the place that selects you first. And so for him, LSU of all the places was the place that sent him an acceptance letter first. And so just through sheer faith, he and my mom talked, and if you talk to my mom to this day, she just said like she just knew it in her gut, like you just need to go. She's like, I'll figure out something with the kids, but you need to go because I think this experience can change our family's life. And so he gets on a plane, he leaves, heads to Baton Rouge, and then shortly after he leaves, full-scale war breaks out. We're essentially fighting for our lives. My mom and dad didn't have contact for 11 months. I think it's 11 months, 10 or 11 months. And what was tough for my dad is he's safe, so to speak, in a not war-torn area in Baton Rouge. However, he has no idea if his family's alive. When the war broke out, I was about four. And at the time, we had four kids. So there's five kids in my family, but at the time, there are four of us. My oldest sister was 10. My sister right above me was was 8. I was 4, and my brother was 9 months old. And so my mom somehow kept all four kids alive for the better part of a year, living in different villages and moving around. It's a really lengthy and honestly somewhat traumatic and dramatic story as well. But that's essentially what happened and is why we led to Baton Rouge and it's through so many crazy interactions and things like that. Like I would love to tell you the full story. I feel like I'm not doing it justice trying to explain, but when we came to the U.S. and we landed, of all places, actually in Newark, New Jersey, it was the first place in the U.S. I stepped foot in. Um, my my mom and dad, literally, I think it had been about 11 and a half months since they had heard each other's voice. Um, over the phone. So yeah. Um, it's what people are like, oh, you just love LSU. It's like it was really out of necessity. And then we end up, and to this day, my parents still live in Baton Rouge. They still, and we grew up like essentially on LSU's campus, and but it's just crazy because so many people there just supported us and for me supported me playing football, which was incredible. So
Baton Rouge is obviously a football crazy area. Do you ever wonder what you would be doing if you ended up someplace else?
I'm not really sure. It's my journey to football. My parents at first didn't want me to play, mostly because they didn't understand it. If it wasn't for my youth minister, a guy named Larkin Harris, he took about 2 years to convince my parents to let me play football. And they agreed to let me play when I started ninth grade. And they only agreed if my GPA stayed above a 3.5. Okay. So it was like strict negotiations. And like I remember this one time my GPA was at like a 3.25 and they were seriously about to yank me from the team and I was gonna be devastated. But I'm not really sure. And I even flirted with careers not in football. Like I flirted with a career. Like I actually began my career at LSU as a pre-dental major. Um, and I really just having the background that my dad has, I really like math, science, and school and all those things. But I just after my junior year, I just pivoted because it was really tough in some of those classes, and I really couldn't see myself going forward. But I'm not really sure if I landed somewhere else, like maybe if we went to the Midwest or somewhere out west. I'm not really sure if I'd have the same football background and desire, but I was in Baton Rouge, which was obsessed with LSU football year round. So,
We're running out of time. I'm gonna get you one last question. This is a fun one. What's your favorite food that's Louisiana centric?
okay, so we first have to answer that question by making a clear distinction of what types of foods exist in Louisiana. So, oftentimes people group it together. So, if you're going to go Cajun versus Creole, so the primary difference is tomato based or not, right? So Creole cuisine would be tomato based and Cajun cuisine would not be. So a lot of times people will say, like, for instance, if you say, oh, I had some jambalaya, my question to you would be, did you have Cajun jambalaya or did you have Creole jambalaya? So my wife is from Cajun country, which is in Southwest Louisiana. And for me, I prefer, uh, Cajun cuisine. I do like Creole gumbo because of all the various things they put in there. I don't particularly love Creole jambalaya, but I'm partial to Creole cooking. And if you had to give me one meal that like you get for me, give me a chicken, pork, and sausage jambalaya that's Cajun style. That I'd be a happy camper. And if you
Sign me
had
up.
some boudin as an appetizer, I'd take that as well too.
Sign me up. That sounds great. I
Yeah,
love both Cajun and Creole. I don't care. I like both. All right.
yeah,
Thanks a lot, Coach, for your time. Thanks, everybody.
absolutely.
Wags
Thank you.
You guys.